All right, folks, welcome once again, everybody, to our YouTube live channel. I'm Mike Frank here with Christian McCollum, and today we're going to talk offensive line for 2024. If you've missed our previous videos, you can check them out on our YouTube channel. Christian and I talking a lot of 224 guys, and we've done quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and now we're getting into, or did we do tight end? I don't remember.
I think we did tight end with the receivers.
Oh, did we? Okay. All right. So now we're at O-line. I can't even remember where we're at. But yeah, now we're at O-line, and thought we would just kind of talk about some of these players. It's kind of an interesting thing, Christian, because they've taken so many in the last couple classes that a lot of IrishSportsDaily.com customers have said, well, what's going on at O-line? They just haven't offered a lot. So far, there's really only been 4 offers. But the way you have to look at it is really there's probably only going to be 3 spots for offensive linemen unless you see kind of a mass exodus of players bouncing out of the program. Now, with the transfer portal, of course, that could potentially happen, but you can't really start recruiting a bunch of guys unless you know what the situation is going to be. So I think the reason we haven't seen as many offers is because of that reason. There's probably only going to be 3 guys taken in this class, and Notre Dame's had a number of their top guys on campus already. They've offered only 4. I expect that to expand, but I think right now Notre Dame's just kind of trying to figure out what's going to happen with Peter Jones, and a guy who just came up on campus on Tuesday, a guy they've put a lot of time and effort into already. Seems like he's kind of the guy that they're focusing on right now. And if you can land that guy, I think that it's a good start. Now, to me, I really like this guy's film. When you watch him, he's a guy that kind of fits everything that Harry's looking for. But most importantly, the things that I like the most about him is there's a lot of film of him doing a lot of different things. You see him kind of pulling at times. You see him kind of just straight drive blocking, man blocking, trying to find his guy. You see him work combos a lot, like right here. You see him working a combo block there. You see him playing in kind of some outside zone type of plays. And you see him a lot in pass protection as well. Here he is in outside zone, just kind of sealing off his edge and getting his guy. And this is a guy, when you watch his film, he can do a lot of things and do it well. A lot of times, Christian, when we see these guys, we don't, we'll see them maybe as run blockers. Most of their highlight film is them as run blockers. We don't see them, as pass blockers as much, or as, doing a lot of different types of things, getting out in space and pulling. In this situation with this film, when you watch Peter Jones, I mean, this guy's got a lot of film doing a lot of different things, and you can tell why Harry really likes this guy. Where do you think Notre Dame is with him right now? I know you spoke with him after the visit. Where do you think they are right now?
Yeah, I think Notre Dame's in a real good spot here with Peter Jones. Like you said, he was up this week for the barbecue. It was his second visit. He visited back in back earlier in the spring, and really enjoyed himself after he got the offer. Came back this time, brought his whole family pretty much. Brought his mom, sister, grandparents, everybody. And, he really wanted to get that deeper look. He told me beforehand, he said, I want to get deeper look into the classrooms. I want to establish a relationship with Coach Heastan. To that point, most of his contact had been with Chad Bowden. And so he came in on Monday, right? Everyone else, the event was on Tuesday. He came in Monday, got a chance to really dive in deep to all that stuff. He had like 3 or 4 meetings with Heastan on Monday, along with, the rest of the staff, Tommy Reese, Chad Bowden, Marcus Freeman. And then on Tuesday, he had more meetings with Heastan, and him and Harry were together long after the event had actually ended, just kind of spending time together. And that was really important to him. He really enjoyed himself, really had a lot of questions answered. That was one thing the Notre Dame staff really hit on. Do you have any questions? Is there anything that hasn't been answered? Especially for his family, who was his first time there. Now he's a kid. He's a real mature kid. I know a lot of people on ISD have commented about how old he looks. One subscriber said he looks like a 6-year senior already. He's that mature too. You would think you're talking to a college kid already. He's taking a real measured approach to this process. But at the same time, I think things are starting to become clear to him. He's starting to see the schools he really likes, maybe schools he doesn't like as much. And I think right now the other school to really keep an eye on is Penn State. Goes to Penn State on Saturday. And he told me he really wants to compare what Penn State is right after this Notre Dame visit, which kind of tells me Notre Dame set the bar. Now, I don't think anything's over with by any chance. I don't think he's going to rush into a decision. But like I said, at the same time, things are starting to become a little more clear for him. So I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see him start shortening his list here soon.
The other thing is, as you see as this film goes on, is that they show him playing some defense, and you get to see his ability to kind of turn left and right and that type of thing. You see him here firing off the ball and doing a lot of different things. He looks like a right tackle to me. I don't think he has kind of the athleticism that say an Emil Wagner would have, or those types of players. But Notre Dame had guys like Sullivan, Ebsher, and Pendleton, Sam Pendleton in this current class. And I'd say those guys are a little bit taller, but when you look at Peter Jones, I think he's a little bit wider at this point. He's a guy who's going to come in at about 300 pounds. He could play guard for sure and be a real dominant player at guard. But this is a guy I just like seeing so much different film of him doing so many different things. So I think you can totally see what's going on with, they're so hot after him just because there's so much good film of him and him actually playing very well and at doing a lot of different things. Who we got next, Chris?
Next up is 2024 Indiana offensive lineman Ian Moore, another guy who was at the barbecue this week.
Yeah, see, this is interesting, and I think the reason I think a lot of us expected Ian Moore to be, to get offered this weekend or this week, and I was a little bit surprised, I have to say, because I think he's a really solid player. But what I will say is I think he's a lot like Peter Jones, and that he's probably a right tackle, probably could play guard. And Notre Dame is always looking for tackles, but you see him pulling in space here, moving quickly. He fires off the ball really well. You can tell he's going to be a big guy. He's already at least 290. So he's a guy who's going to be a really dominant player. He's got some good offers already. Ohio State, I believe Penn State's offered him. Here's a guy that's a, really talented player. And it's surprising that, somebody in state hasn't picked up an offer yet. But again, I think because he's so similar to Peter Jones and they're kind of further down the road with Peter Jones, it seems like, they kind of want to see what's going to happen with Peter Jones before they offer Ian Moore. At least that's just kind of the way it looks, because when you look at a lot of the other guys that we're going to talk about today, they just have a little bit different body type. You can see that they're going to be slated for different positions. But to me, both these guys look like right tackles, guys who could bounce into guard, just very similar players. And when you're only taking 3, that's the reason that you got to be picky at this point. You want to make sure you get a left tackle. There's some left tackle prospects we'll talk about here shortly that I really like. But when you look at the talent of some of these guys, they're different at what they can do. And so again, I think that's why we didn't see Ian Moore get an offer, at least initially. Now maybe that'll change. I know Harry said he wanted to kind of see his senior film, and of course I think Notre Dame also wants to see where they're at with some of their other prospects as well, and try and get them up on campus and figure it out. It's not a huge need right now for offensive line, and I think if Notre Dame could land Peter Jones early, which I'm sure they're trying to do, that will allow them to be very picky on looking for maybe an interior player and then also looking for a left tackle prospect. So kind of my thoughts on that. Anything you got to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting to have a kid who's an in-state kid who's already got offers from, like you said, Ohio State. He camped at Ohio State and earned that offer. Also, Penn State, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Miami, Tennessee. It's pretty interesting to have a kid like that on campus multiple times and have him leave, telling him you need to see a little bit more. I think you hit it, though, Mike. I think it's a Peter Jones thing. I think, like I said, with Peter Jones coming in on Monday, I think Notre Dame maybe they feel pretty confident about where they are there. But at the same time, as far as Ian goes, he told me he had a great visit to Notre Dame this time. He had been up before, but it's a short visit. Had a chance to spend time with Brian Mason, who kind of recruits in-state. Also had a chance to spend some time with Stan. And he's going to Iowa and Nebraska this week. And, for his part, he didn't seem too disappointed about not getting an offer. I think it's kind of it is what it is. And, he said he wanted to come back in the fall for a game. So somebody that's still interested in Notre Dame, apparently.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because my guess is Notre Dame's looking at the situation saying, let's see where we stand after Peter Jones visits Penn State, because if they're in a real good position after that situation, then maybe that kind of right tackle swing guy is already in fold in Peter Jones. And so then again, you're looking for more of an interior guard and then certainly a left tackle. You can never have too many left tackles. All right, Chris, let's move on to who we got next.
2024 Massachusetts offensive lineman Gerby Lambert.
Oh boy, I like this guy a lot. You can tell he is a very raw player, a guy who has not played a lot. But boy, what a nice mound of clay. When you watch this guy, he just does a lot of things that he finds his man. He just punishes him. You see him pass block and that type of thing. He's not what I would say a great finisher at this point, but again, I think it's more inexperience. If memory serves, he's only played a couple of years. Is that correct, Chris?
Yeah, he's only played football for about a year.
Okay.
He was playing soccer, and he started playing football because COVID. There was a spring season in Massachusetts for COVID, so that's when he started playing.
Mm-hmm. I just like the thing that I like about him, and when I'm looking at guys, you got to look at their lower base and can they bend? Do you see him getting low and bend and his back not being hunched up and his rear end being way up in the air? Being able to bend allows you to get leverage. It allows you to get into your man and get a nice punch on that first thing as far as pass protection. You see his body there real low, his butt real low there, and this guy has no chance at all. And here's a guy who's only played 1 year of football. Now, again, it's Massachusetts football. No disrespect, Christian. I know that's your area. So it's not necessarily the best competition, but Boston College has been pulling kids out of there for a long time. They end up playing 20 years in the league and becoming first round draft picks. And this is the same kind of guy that they would get in the past. But as Christian has seen, Massachusetts football starting to pick up a lot of pull amongst a lot of recruiters. People are going in there because they realize there's some really talented football players. He's playing right tackle here, obviously, but I think he has the ability to play left tackle. He moves really well for his size. He's easily going to be 320 just based off of his body frame right now. You can see his lower body is not necessarily that big. And so that he's going to get much thicker in that lower body and become much more of a powerful player. But you can see his technique is not the best. He's going to need to learn some things, but it's just he looks like a dancing bear out there in pass protection, very, very easily. And I just love the way that he moves, with his feet and everything when he has an opportunity to be a pass protector. It's interesting, Chris, because you said that this is not a guy who speaks much. So we don't know much about him or his interest at this point, but he's just a tremendous mound of clay. And I think if you get a really good coach like a Harry Hiestand, somebody who's been around and can connect with him, he could be a first round draft pick. You just get that kind of potential. Your thoughts on him and where he's at?
Yeah, and not a huge talker. I don't even think he's a huge talker, not just to the media and personally too. I mean, he goes to Catholic Memorial, right? Same high school as Boubacar Traore, and he's talked with Boubacar a little bit about Notre Dame, and he's heard from Boubacar's family about the process and football and stuff like that. But it doesn't even seem like he's dove in much, even with Boubacar, about things. But that's a big time program in Massachusetts. Catholic Memorial always has been. Like you said, Boston College recruits it heavily. Notre Dame obviously familiar with it. And I'll tell you this, he's one kid who's serious about his academics, right? So the coaches and the academics, I mean, Notre Dame's been in contact here, obviously. They've offered him. I'm sure Hiestand went out and saw him during the evaluation period. And so far, all the boxes are checked, even though he's not out there telling everyone, oh, my God, I love Notre Dame. I love this school, that school. It seems to be the kind of school that has his attention. And I'd say Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State. You could throw BC in there as well. But those are kind of the schools that you'd expect a big-time Massachusetts prospect that could end up at Notre Dame to look at. So I think Notre Dame has good inroad there, like I said, with Boubacar being there, and just kind of the Catholic Memorial High School seems like the kind of kid that would definitely seriously consider Notre Dame, and that's what he's doing.
Yeah, you throw him and Peter Jones in the mix, and I'd be thrilled because I think that you got somebody who's real athletic, could play left tackle, and his upside is really high. So I like the guy. I think he's a really talented player. He's got good offers already as well for a guy that's only played 1 year. So it seems like a lot of teams are starting to notice this player.
Yeah, no doubt. And so Massachusetts in general, right? So I've talked to a lot of people about it. And an interesting theory I heard from one guy was that the Patriots' success has made football such a big time, fan interest in Massachusetts over the last 20 years that a lot of parents / moms are letting their kids play football when they wouldn't, and that's where you see a influx of talent coming out of the state. Thank Tom Brady.
All right, who we got next, buddy?
We've got 2024 Maryland offensive lineman Kyle Altooner.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised the guy hasn't gotten offered. He when I watched a couple of these guys, they're very hairy type players. Here's a guy that just loves to hit people, and he's a guard, but look at him pull here. Look at him pull and get out in space, and then he just wants to punish people. This is a guy that I'm surprised Harry hasn't offered just based off of what he can do. He kind of reminds me of a Joe Otting a little bit in that he's not necessarily like has the greatest measurables or any of those types of things, but when you watch him fire off the ball, he comes in and he wants to hit some people, and he's got that big lower base. How much bigger? I think maybe that's a question, because if you look at his lower base, it's already pretty filled out. So how much bigger can he get? I think he can get bigger, certainly. But if you want to start playing with the big boys, you want to. I mean, look at that. He just fires off the ball. I love this guy. And what we don't see is a whole lot of pass protection. So maybe that's part of it too. We know Harry puts a big priority on pass protection. But again, I think guards they're easier to get than it is tackle. Look at that, just destroying guys in there. So
Mike, they've offered him in March.
Oh, I didn't know they offered him.
Yeah,
okay.
They offered him in March, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I like this guy. I think he's a really talented player. And again, he looks like a guy that Harry would love. And so that's why I must have just not noticed that. I didn't know he was offered, but boy, I can see why. I can definitely see why. And he could play a lot of different positions. I don't think he's a tackle. I think he's going to be more of a guard in the end. But I really hope that Notre Dame has or that he has a strong interest in Notre Dame, because again, he reminds me of a much bigger version of Otting, and we know why Harry loved Otting, and this guy shows the same thing. He's going to show up at least 290 and ready to play and be a dominant player. So I really hope they get him.
Yeah, so he visited back in November for a game. Really liked it, liked the atmosphere, all that stuff. And then, like I said, Notre Dame offered him in March, and he really went on like a run, right? This spring, he got offers from Michigan State, Penn State, Miami, Louisville, all those schools. So he really saw his profile rise a lot this offseason. Pretty much he likes Notre Dame's offensive line tradition, which is something that, most offensive linemen would say. I expect somewhat of a list of favorites to come out relatively soon, and I think Notre Dame would be on that along with Penn State and Michigan, and we'll see where a school like Maryland comes in. Rutgers, another school that has his attention. They do a good job recruiting guys early. They don't always win all the battles, but they're usually in on them, so they do a good job evaluating as well. Now he's a good council kid. Seems like a school Notre Dame should have had more success with over the years. But sometimes it just takes, a kid or two to really kind of open the floodgates and that kind of thing. So, but we'll see. Definitely a kid that's interested in education. That's a pretty high academic school. So education, athletics will be big, which is why he's considering schools like Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, those kind of things.
Yeah, see, I think he's a tremendous talent. It's just when I saw good counts, I was like, oh boy, it just doesn't usually work out really well for Notre Dame. But hopefully they can get him back on campus and Notre Dame makes the top list here, because I do think he's a really talented player. And I don't know where he ranks in the top 250 players, but I see him being one of the better guards in the country out of all the guys I've seen. Is he the top guard? Certainly not. But I think he's a high 4-star player for sure. All right, who got next? Go ahead.
Yeah, the next guy we have is 2024 offensive lineman Josiah Thompson, the fourth offensive lineman Notre Dame's offered so far.
Yeah, I love this guy too, and he looks legit. This is definitely an SEC type of lineman. Very, very light on his feet. A guy, as you can see, can pull and just destroy people. Definitely could be a left tackle. But also could be a dominant guard. He's going to be, look at him pull there and just get in front of guys and just mow people over. He's going to be a guy that is going to be, I think, highly, highly recruited. Will Notre Dame have much of a shot? I don't know. They don't get a lot of guys from that area. It's not usually a good situation, but I can see why he's offered. He's a guy who could play left tackle. He would not be necessarily your best, option as far as lightest on his feet type of thing, but Notre Dame hasn't had a dominant left tackle in the run game really since McGlinchey was pretty good, obviously, when he was playing there. But, Zach Martin was really a dominant run game left tackle, but still a really solid pass protector as well. This is a guy I think is going to go to somewhere in the SEC and be an all-conference player. He's just got everything that you could ever want in an offensive lineman: size, feet, plays low, power, wants to hit people. I think he's a really talented player, and I hope Notre Dame will have a shot, but chances are it's probably going to be a long shot when it's all said and done. What are your thoughts here, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think they have much of a shot. Number one, and I think this is pretty. He's leaning heavily towards South Carolina at this point, and he hasn't really been shy about it. Notre Dame offered him in March. They went down to see him twice during the evaluation period. It's not really clear if they've even piqued his interest very much. So like you said, he's a kid that's going to be difficult to pull out of the South. He's mentioned Notre Dame as a team he's interested in, but the focus seems to be on South Carolina, Clemson, Georgia, schools like that, and South Carolina is clearly the team to beat right now.
Yeah. All right. Who we got next?
Next up, we have another Massachusetts guy, offensive lineman Liam Andrews.
Yeah, I think this, if you can't get into with Kyle Altooner, I think Liam Andrews is a nice option. He moves his feet really well, turns left and right. He's a good puller, very good quickness off the ball, kind of an old school Harry type of lineman. But again, see him playing some defense here. Pursuit's really good. He moves well. I love seeing the defensive film because it allows you to see how well they can turn left and right and just their short area quickness. And when you watch this guy, he's a really talented player. Again, I think it's a situation where Massachusetts, you've had Altooner on campus already. He's shown some interest, and you're only taking 3. So I think that's kind of why Liam Andrews hasn't quite been offered yet. But I think he's a real talented player, a guy who's pretty solid in pass protection, but definitely more of a kind of a dominant guard mauler type of guy. How big is he going to get? That's a question. I think when you look at some of these SEC lines and really Ohio State and some of these other teams lately, Chris, you start looking at their lines, and it used to be, boy, if you could get all your guys 300, you were feeling pretty good. But now it almost seems like 320 is the shooting point, and if you can get your tackles up to 330, you're doing pretty good as well. So sometimes size becomes an issue too, and length and that type of thing. But I could see this guy getting an offer down the road. Especially if things with like Altooner don't turn like you'd hope, and you don't get the kind of interest you're looking for. But he's a guy I'd keep on my list and somebody I'd be watching because he seems like the type of player that Harry would be interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. Mass prep kid. And this isn't one of those, let's settle for a prep school kid from Massachusetts. I mean, this kid's got big time offers. You're talking Michigan, Penn State, Texas A&M, LSU, Oklahoma, Duke, Virginia, Ohio State. So, this is a kid that would fit Notre Dame. Now, he visited in November, seemed to like it. He's not a huge talker. Stan went out and saw him during the evaluation period. And he's also a kid that's been busy on the road, right? So he's been down to A&M, he's been down to LSU, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Bama, Penn State. He made all those trips like last month. Then he visited a round of schools in March. So location is not going to be of interest, a thing that bothers him. I'm not sure if he's from Massachusetts or if he just goes to school there. But it seems like a kid he's looking for big time football, right? And obviously if he goes to a prep school in Massachusetts, academics is important, but you're not visiting Alabama in June if you're not interested in playing high level football. So this is a kid that I think if Notre Dame does decide to offer, I think they'd have a great shot at him.
And here's the thing. When I start thinking about it, Chris, I do get a little bit worried because we've kind of seen this game plan in the past and it not pan out in that, and this was under Harry, where he'd kind of fall in love with certain guys and hope to land them. And then if they didn't land them, there was no plan B. You're not paying attention to plan B and you're not recruiting him. For a guy like Liam Andrews, I mean, if you ignore him and don't recruit him heavily and offer him when he has so many offers at so many other schools, at some point, you're going to say, well, what, unless he's a guy who absolutely loves Notre Dame and that's the place he wants to go, then he's going to be saying to himself, well, Ohio State liked me, Penn State liked me, LSU liked me, all these other schools liked me a long time ago, and Notre Dame's coming in late with an offer. Again, because you only are taking 3, this is kind of the situation where you paint yourself into a corner. But I think you can have those conversations. I don't understand why you can't have those conversations that says, look, we really like you. We think you're a really good player. We're going to offer you soon. Just be patient with us, and really have those conversations to let them know. So when you do have to, get something squared away, you're in the race. What you don't want to do is just keep waiting for Altooner to show up again in the fall for a game and hope that you have a shot with him and then ignore this guy. And so for those who've had some concerns or whatever when it comes to Harry and recruiting because of things that happened in the past, these are the situations that I think we have to monitor and see what's going on, because what you don't want to do is, this guy's a good player. If you can play defense and be really effective on defense and move like he does and pull like he does, and he shows the willingness and he has the size, you don't want to ignore a guy like this. And I don't, let's be honest, they're not ignoring him. They've been to see him. He's a guy they like, but I just hope that they're recruiting him as hard as they're recruiting everybody else, because you may end up with plan B, and this guy would be a very good plan B. What you don't want to do is ignore this guy and then find out he has no interest, and then you have to go recruit somebody else who's not nearly as talented as this guy, and scramble to find somebody. So plan B is extremely important, and I just hope that that's what they're doing with a lot of these guys moving forward. All right, yep. Chris,
Next up is 2024 Tennessee offensive lineman Ronan O'Connell.
Yeah, this is another guy I think could play left tackle. He's got very, very good feet, fires off the ball. I don't see the elite knee bend as some of the others, but he's certainly got the size and he's got the foot speed, to move and be an effective player. It's interesting because you see him playing some guard here. He's played a lot of different positions. Here he's at left tackle. So you see him doing a lot of different things, but, kind of reminds me of a Monroe Freeling type of guy, but not necessarily quite as agile. But then you see him move like that and you're like, holy crap, this guy can move. And so I see him as a potential left tackle type of guy, certainly going to have the size. You can see he's going to get bigger. Kind of reminds me of Elijah Page too, a little bit in his body type. So, he's going to need to get bigger, but you can see he has the frame to do that. I don't think he's as adept at pass protection as Elijah Page. But I think this guy's going to be a guy who's going to get a lot of offers from a lot of schools. Already has some pretty good offers down south, and I can see why Notre Dame is interested in him. Where do you think? Do you think Notre Dame has much of a shot at him? Has he shown much interest?
Yeah, so he came up to camp last month. He left without an offer, but said he still wants to return. You mentioned he had some good offers down south. He's got Tennessee. He had Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida State, Mississippi State, those schools. He camped at Cincinnati, Vanderbilt, and Wisconsin in addition to Notre Dame, and left those places with offers. Didn't seem to be too disappointed about the fact that he didn't get Notre Dame. I think they do a good job of explaining that when they're in person on camps and stuff. But, you talked about down south. Kid's from New Jersey originally. So weather's not going to be an issue for him. And it's not a kid who's like married to the South where he's going to be hard to get out of there, or maybe as hard as your traditional kid from the South. The fact that he's already come up for camp shows some interest. We'll have to see where Notre Dame decides if they decide to move on him. Obviously, like you said, timing is always going to be an issue. But a kid that they would probably have a shot at if they did decide to move, depending on when they did.
Yeah, I think he's a talented player. I would like to see how he moves with a little more weight on him. So we'll have to see how it looks on, junior film and everything. But I think he's a really talented player and a guy that I could see Notre Dame being very interested, especially if something doesn't work out really well with a Peter Jones or an Ian Moore. But again, I think he has the feet to potentially play left tackle. Does a good job. This guy's certainly a lot lighter and quicker than him, and he does a good job there. But also, you see the position flexibility where he plays a lot of different positions and on different sides of the ball and is effective. So having a versatile guy like that, I think, is important. All right.
Next up, we have the massive 2024 Virginia offensive lineman, Fletcher Westfall.
Yeah. I'm a little surprised Notre Dame hasn't offered him yet either. Again, as you said, a big, tall, very long left tackle prospect. Now, I don't think he's the finisher of some of the others, but he's a really good, talented guy, and you don't get frames like that very often. This guy's going to be massive when it's all said and done. Look at that guy. I mean, he's just big. He's way bigger than everybody else. And I'm surprised that Notre Dame hasn't offered him. But again, I don't know if he's, will he be a left tackle? I don't know. He certainly has the frame to be. There's a nice punch off the ball and certainly showing some power. But again, finisher, I think, would have just buried that guy. Here, he just kind of pushes him a little bit, land on top of him, crunch him. That's what you want to see. That's what Harry wants to see. But you can tell he's certainly a guy who's got big body. And I wonder if the reason why, again, is maybe they see him more as a right tackle than a left tackle, which Peter Jones is certainly that guy as well. So I think that might be one of the reasons why they haven't offered him. But it wouldn't surprise me if he gets offered fairly soon. He's just a big dude who moves well and could play a lot of different positions for you. But what do you think their interest is here, or his interest is right now?
Yeah, he's got some interest. He was at Notre Dame for a game in October, and he said he wanted to get. He said he wanted to get back. He's also serious about his academics, and he wants to major in business. So he's looking for a college that has a really good business school. So Notre Dame checks that box as well. I mean, he's huge, right? I saw him. I spent time with him in person down in San Antonio when he was there for the combine, and all these guys are bigger than me, but he was like, whoa. He was just massive dude. And, I was kind of interested because when he came up for Notre Dame, it was clear how big he was. He only had a couple offers, like I think he had like Pitt and Virginia were his first two real major offers. And, he really liked those schools. And then this spring, he blew up. He added Clemson, Georgia, Wisconsin, Miami, Stanford, Northwestern, Tennessee, schools like that. So he really, really blew up this spring. And then he took a big tour this spring as well. In June, he went to Clemson, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, Georgia, Bama, Auburn, Ohio State, all those schools. So a kid that, is definitely willing to go wherever he needs to go to find the best fit for him. And I think Notre Dame, if they decide to offer, given that, academic background, and that's what he's looking for, I think they'd have a pretty good shot at it.
Yeah, I like him. I think he's a really talented player, and again, I'm a little surprised he hasn't been offered. But I think that they just look at what they're trying to figure out, who fits best and that type of thing. And he's going to be a really talented player. There's no doubt he's going to be 330 pounds and just be a big man, somebody very hard to get around. So I can see why everybody's interested in him. And again, I think because they're looking for left tackles. Can he play left tackle? And I think he moves really well. I would just like to see it against maybe some better competition to know, whether he can handle that outside speed rush and use his feet. A lot of the stuff we see here is more run blocking. We don't see him a lot in pass protection, which that would be a question mark if I were Harry. And again, this is a highlight film. We don't get to see what they do in pass protection on the full game film like they do. So maybe that's a concern. I don't know. But again, if you watch the film, a lot of it is run blocking. And if you're going to play left tackle, you need to make sure that you can prove that you can be a dominant pass protector as well. So, all right. We got anybody left?
Yeah, we got one more guy, 2024 Michigan offensive lineman, Andrew Dennis.
Yeah, this is another interesting guy. I think he's certainly a projectable guy. Not the biggest guy in the world, but you can see he's got athleticism. He's got the ability to move really, really well. And I think my understanding, isn't he a really young kid too? I heard something like he was a young
first grade.
Yeah, I heard he's young for his grade as well. And so that may be a situation where they look at it and say, boy, this guy's probably not done growing. They list him at about 260. I'd say that's about right. He hasn't played much football. I think only a couple years as well. So you're not going to get a polished player at this point, but you can see he's a willing blocker. There's a nice pancake. You got to like that. And he stayed on his man. And even when the guy got a little bit off balance, he was able to kind of hold on inside those shoulder pads and drive him to the ground. So I think he's got a lot of potential. He's a guy, if I'm Harry and say somebody bounces and you have an opportunity for a fourth offensive lineman, this is a guy you take a chance on because he's a guy that could really develop into a heck of a player. Certainly looks like he has the feet to play left tackle. And if you get a guy like that's kind of up and coming and projectable, you've got a lot of elite players right now. Spend some time with this guy, give him 2 years in the weight room with Bayless and some coaching, and you could have a really special guy. Seems like one of those guys that would go to some MAC school and then develop into a first-round draft pick just because he was a little undersized. So I could see the interest in Notre Dame, or Notre Dame having interest in him. You would like to get a guy that's probably a little more advanced, a little bit more physically bigger at this point. But again, if he's a little bit younger, I could see why teams would be interested in him, especially Notre Dame, because his best football is certainly ahead of him.
Yeah, you mentioned MAC kid that goes in, blossoms to a first-round talent. So right now, that's pretty much all his offers are all MAC offers. But like you said, he's only played football for a couple years. The other thing I like about this kid is I saw him down at the Combine in San Antonio as well. Like you said, he's still got some growing to do and stuff like that. He's young. So he wasn't like one of those guys that just like everyone was like, wow. Like I remember seeing Braden Smith at the Combine, 10 years ago. And it was like, wow. He wasn't that. But he's better on film than he was at the Combine, which is sometimes you see the reverse of that, and it's not really a good sign. But you see this kid, if you were to meet this kid, he's pretty soft-spoken, very cerebral.
Nice
then you see his blocking, and you're like, oh, wow, he's got some mean to him that you wouldn't see at a shirt and shoulder pads or shirt and shorts type event. So that's, good to see. Been to Notre Dame multiple times already. Academics can be hugely important. So that's going to be, Notre Dame would be one of the schools he would seriously consider if they were to offer. And in fact, I think they'd probably be hard to beat, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you can see he does a good job staying low, getting some leverage there, just blowing people off the ball. So there's a lot to like here. And again, like I said, he kind of reminds you of one of those MAC players that was a little undersized and then just grew into being a really dominant player. I think if he gets the right coaching and the right athletic training, he could be a really special player for somebody. And again, if you're going to take 4 O linemen, you have an opportunity. This is a guy I'd look at for sure. I think I'd have to know his measurables and that type of thing to get a better understanding. But you can tell he's got real long arms. I think he's going to be a really good player down the road. But he's a guy that's going to be 2 years in the program for sure before he's ready to go. All right, is that it, buddy?
Yeah, those are all the guys that we have right now. Obviously, it's not an exhaustive list of every single prospect on Notre Dame's board, but these are some of the top guys. Good sampling of the guys that they've offered, as well as the guys that there's clearly mutual interest in.
Yeah, I like these guys. I think that Notre Dame. There's no Blake Fisher in here. You know what I mean? There's no Blake Fisher in here. But I like the guys. I think they've all got talent. They all could be really talented players for Notre Dame. We'll have to see how it all plays out. But for me, when I look at the O-line situation, I do think that they need a dominant right tackle. Somebody who can be a really, bone crusher. They haven't had a right tackle in a while that is just a purely dominant, run blocker, but also an effective pass blocker. So I get the focus on Peter Jones and we'll see what happens there. But after that, for me, the big concern for me is let's just make sure you're staying up on plan B. If you only have 4 offers right now, I'm okay with that as long as your plan B you've worked out and you're working really hard to make sure that they know that they're next in line and that you're definitely going to recruit them and that they're probably going to get offered here fairly soon. Again, you want to try and get your best players on campus and see where you're at. But I wouldn't wait too long if you don't get some of these guys in for the first couple games. If you don't get some of the guys that you like in for these first couple games, or you don't get a good solid excuse as to why they're not coming, then I think it's really important to move on and move on quickly.
One tiny little bit of breaking news, Mike, for our viewers that are watching us live. We caught wind of this morning, but I was told not to hold off on until I was given the go-ahead, which was just while we were taping. Notre Dame offered 2023 Kansas State running back commit Dylan Edwards last night. He's on campus today.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah. So he's
wow,
a kid.
That dude is good, man.
He is, and he is fast, right? So he's a kid.
Oh my gosh, I love this kid.
He's been like Kansas State's unofficial recruiting coordinator, right? He's really good friends with Avery Johnson, the quarterback that Notre Dame showed some interest in. And like they've been pumping Kansas State. And I'm like, man, Notre Dame offered this kid and he seems like he's all in on Kansas State, but I can't imagine Notre Dame would recruit him if they didn't have a chance. They knew they'd have a chance or offer him. And when I sent that to the guy last night, he sent me back eyeball emojis.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to note he's people are wondering, does this mean anything about Jeremiah Love? I was told flat out no. And I think he's the kid. Edwards is the kid who would be brought in more as an athlete, more as the slot / running back, fly sweep guy, where they still feel really good about Love. But yeah, Dylan Edwards is on campus right now.
Wow. I love this kid. If you guys haven't seen his film, watch this kid's film.
Fast.
Extremely explosive. And I'm surprised they're not recruiting him as a running back because I think he's a tremendous running back too. I really do. I understand he's not the biggest guy and that type of thing, but neither is Chris Tyree. So this guy is extremely explosive. I think he's instinctual as a running back, a guy who sees the hole and has the ability to find his way through things, turns on a dime. I love this player. I would love for this guy to be in the class. He'd be one of my favorite players if they added him. I really like him that much. So I really hope that they land him. And these are the kind of game breakers Notre Dame's been missing. You need guys with this kind of ability to break open the games and to make those game-changing, momentum-changing plays. And he has the ability to do it, not just as a running back, but as a receiver out of the backfield and as a returner as well. He's an extremely explosive player. One of my favorites in the class. I really hope they land him. So that's good news, Chris. Well, thanks for making my day, buddy.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right. Well, when is Shea gonna come in now? So we saw you toasted your brother. So how far before Shea is the Notre Dame recruit here?
We'll see. I mean, he's started working out like in December like in November. And it was like he grew up in like the year, but then he started working out. And so I'm like, bro, like, don't try to test me because you're getting bigger now. And like, I'll have to hurt you to keep you down. And so what I told him was this, we've raced a bunch. He's never beat me. I said, you can challenge me 2 more times to 2 more races the rest of your life. And that's it. If I beat you both times, I'm never racing you again. And I'll always say I'm faster. And so I don't know. Right now, he absolutely toasted my brother, who was a track star. I was talking a lot of trash on family vacation.
It was beautiful.
So we'll see. Yeah, it was great. It was great.
It was my laugh.
I enjoyed
one of the best videos I've seen, and it was more because of you laughing more than anything.
Well, it's also just the shock value of like my brother.
Well, you said that he talked a bunch of smack afterwards.
So he didn't give him any chance. He said, 0 chance you will beat me. There's not a chance. Do you know what I did? Blah, blah, blah. And they always look at Shea as like, they still call him Baby Shea. Yeah, and just to get smoked by Baby Shea was just absolutely hilarious.
But I wanted to hear the video after where Shea was talking smack to your brother. That's what I wanted to see.
Ryan just kind of took it in stride, didn't say a lot. I know you tease him on Facebook. You can see the way he just took it. There's no, nothing to say about it. He just kind of put his head down. Good race. I'm glad I didn't get hurt, and that was it. And then there was some talk later about like if the race was longer, if I didn't get to a better start, it could have had a chance. And we just set that down. We said, bro, if you think you're faster than him, you got to think that internally. You can't say that out loud anymore.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, folks. We'll be back. I got to travel to South Bend, so I'm not sure we'll have a show next week because I got to go for fall camp. But we'll be back. Once I get back, Christian and I will be diving into the D-line and all that type of stuff. We've already got a couple commits there. So, we know the situation. We'll talk about that as well as what they're going to pursue moving forward. And there's some really good prospects that just visited recently that I really like. And I think are going to be really, really good players. TJ doesn't have the offers of some of the others, but he's exactly what I've been talking about. 6'4", about 205, 210 pounds, that just can bend and be a really good pass rusher. I'm surprised he doesn't have more offers, to be honest with you. I think he's a really talented player, but we'll talk about him and many others moving forward in the next episode of the recruiting stuff we're going to do here. So hope you enjoy it. If you're not a member of IrishSportsDaily.com, it's a great time to sign up because we got fall camp coming up here shortly. We're going to have a lot going on with recruiting as well. And if you're not a subscriber of our YouTube channel, make sure you click on the subscribe button at the bottom, and it'll alert you every time we go live like now, and it'll also alert you when new videos are uploaded as well. So it doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the YouTube channel. So click on there, and hopefully you enjoyed this, and we'll be back soon.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Yeah.